At least 15 people have been killed in Haiti in suspected revenge attacks by the police following the death of an officer. Hundreds of indigenous people continue to camp outside Brazil's government buildings against a bill that threatens their ancestral land rights. Canada Day on July 1st must be cancelled, First Nations groups demand. According to them, outrage over the murder of hundreds of indigenous children at Christian schools makes celebrations impossible. From the headquarters of teleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is from the south, and I'm Katrina Goss. At least 15 people have been killed in Haiti in revenge attacks by the police following the death of an officer. The killings come amid a surge in gang violence in the Haitian capital, Port-au-Prince, that has displaced thousands from poor neighbourhoods in recent weeks, in a country that continues to see widespread insecurity and political instability. A journalist and a political activist were among those killed in a spate of overnight shootings, the government said on Wednesday. A press freedom group urged authorities to conduct a thorough investigation. The National Police Chief told a press conference that allies of Guebi Gefard, the murdered police officer, concocted the shootings which resulted in the death of 15 peaceful citizens. Gefard, spokesperson for a police union that is in open conflict with the police force, was shot hours before the shooting spree in the same city district. 7 key witnesses of Bolivia's 2019 coup against President Evo Morales have been called for deposition by the prosecutor's office this week. The list includes 2 former members of the Plurinational Legislative Assembly who were next in the line of succession to the presidency after the forced resignation of President Morales, Vice President Álvaro García Linera and Senate Speaker Adriano Salvatierra. According to Salvatierra, both parliamentarians were higher in the line of succession than Janine Áñez, who proclaimed herself constitutional president, backed by the armed forces and police top brass. They are Victor Borda, then Speaker of the Chamber of Deputies, and Ruben Medinaceli, First Deputy Speaker of the Senate. Both of them were members of Morales' movement towards socialism. Áñez, who was the Senate's second Deputy Speaker, is currently in jail awaiting trial for her participation in the conspiracy against and overthrow of Evo Morales. In Peru, demonstrators mobilized and rallied outside Congress to demand the proclamation of Pedro Castillo as president-elect. After gathering outside the National Bureau of Elections, the body responsible for declaring the winner of the June 6 election, supporters of the winning candidate Castillo marched to the legislative headquarters in Lima to demand that the democratic will of the Peruvian people be respected. At the same time, citizens mobilized to accompany the coffin of the rural leader and member of the Free Peru Party, Zacarias Meneses, who died after being hospitalized for several days. The public prosecutor's office has ordered the transfer of his body for an autopsy in order to determine the cause of his death after it was attributed to supporters of far-right candidate Keiko Fujimori. In Colombia, human rights organizations continue to denounce violations by the Iván Duque government during the widespread protests in the framework of the national strike. 300 national and international organizations submitted a report to the United Nations Human Rights Council that compiles the abuses suffered by the Colombian people at the hands of the security forces. The document records 83 murders in the context of the anti-government mobilizations, as well as over 100 wounded, more than 3,000 arbitrary detentions, and over 300 forced disappearances. Human rights groups demand the United Nations launch an investigation into the violations and that the right to protest be guaranteed as a constitutional right in Colombia. The final stage of a France-Mexico Gender Equality Forum began this Wednesday in Paris after kicking off in Mexico City last March. The forum is a global gathering for gender equality convened by UN Women and co-hosted by the governments of Mexico and France in partnership with the youth and civil society. Its main purpose is launching a series of concrete, ambitious and transformative actions to achieve immediate and reversible progress towards gender equality. The event will also fuel a powerful and enduring coalition for gender equality, bringing together governments, activists, corporations, feminist organizations, youth and allies to achieve transformative change. And addressing the Paris meeting, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres called for an end to violence against women and criticised their aggression brought by conservative forces that are growing all over the world.
Gender equality is essentially a question of power. Power in a world that is still largely male-dominated and with a culture that is still largely patriarchal. If there is one thing I have learned in my life, it is that power is very rarely given. It has to be taken, and in my opinion this is one of the logics of this forum. Mobilizing grassroots movements, building coalitions, getting resources to rebalance the power relations in the world. Stopping violence against women and girls is an absolutely central issue which, as the President said, has become even worse with COVID. Violence and conflicts, tragic situations in the world, but also violence in the streets and violence in the homes.
Turning to a piece of good news, 2 cubs of the only native bear in South America, the fontin, also known as hucumari, were discovered in the Andean region of Venezuela. These 2 offspring were caught by a hidden camera placed by researchers from the University of Los Andes back in 2020. This is a good news both because they're alive and well and because their presence is evidence that environmental conditions for their safety are granted. A bear mother would not place cubs anywhere near humans and other threats. The fontin is known as the spectacled bear because of the markings on its face. The bears are present in the mountains of Venezuela, Colombia, Ecuador, Peru and Bolivia and are in danger of extinction. These images can only bring hope for their survival. And we'll be right back after this very short break, so don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. Hundreds of indigenous people continue to camp outside Brazil's government buildings against a bill that threatens their ancestral land rights. The protest in the capital Brasilia continues as the Supreme Court hears arguments over the constitutionality of the commercial exploitation of indigenous territory. Representatives of indigenous communities stress that some 20,000 illegal miners and loggers are currently located in a reserve of the Yanomami tribe in the Amazon, an area the size of Portugal, where 27,000 people live. Clashes between indigenous communities on their ancestral lands and illegal loggers and miners have surged since far-right President Jair Bolsonaro took office in 2018, as has the destruction of the Amazon, sparking global outcry. The Supreme Court will determine whether previous demarcations of indigenous lands were legal and binding, and whether the federal government must ensure the reserves are protected from outside encroachment.
Our history didn't start in 1988. We are the native people, owner of the land. Our rights are secured by the federal constitution from 1988, and they haven't been respected by Bolsonaro's government.
Healthcare workers in Chicago, the United States, have been protesting against low wages and benefit cuts in the midst of the ongoing pandemic. Our correspondent Brian Meir brings us more in the following report.
The U.S. federal government recently allocated $350 billion to local governments, but many local officials aren't using it to benefit their workers. In Chicago, Cook County Public Hospital employees who spent over a year risking their lives on the front lines of the COVID-19 pandemic have started fighting back.
The main problem we have is that we're not getting fair wages. We're asking to pay higher premiums on our insurance. We're not asking for no more than what we deserve. We're not asking for no more than what a human being deserves as an employee through a company that teaches us to have empathy for patients, but our managed team don't give us respect, don't give us empathy.
Despite receiving $1 billion in federal stimulus money, the county government offered a contract to its hospital workers that, due to increased health insurance deductions, would result in less pay than they earned last year. Workers are demanding a respectable raise and a reversal of benefit cuts.
We're striking because we need our respect, and the Cook County President, Fred Weekle, hasn't showed us our respect, gave us the same amount of respect that she gave the other unions. So we out here fighting for our respect and our dignity, and we're going to fight to the end.
SEIU Local 73 is promising to maintain the strike until its demands are met. Brian Meir, teleSUR, Chicago.
Paraguay received over 200,000 Sputnik V doses to reinforce its COVID-19 immunisation plan. The shipment arrived at the Asunción airport after leaving Moscow and passing through Buenos Aires. This is the fourth batch of 10 million doses acquired from Russia. The government announced that it will continue with the vaccination campaign, now with the vulnerable population and essential workers. Paraguay has confirmed over 400,000 COVID-19 cases and almost 13,000 deaths in almost a year and a half of pandemic. In Mexico, health authorities have reported an increase in the number of confirmed cases of COVID-19. However, the number of hospitalizations and deaths continues to fall. Meanwhile, the national vaccination plan is progressing. Our correspondent Eduardo Martinez brings us more details in the following report.
Mexico, the national vaccination plan to address the pandemic caused by the novel coronavirus continues. At this stage, people between 40 and 49 years of age are receiving their first doses of the 6 available vaccines.
The truth is that I'm very excited and grateful I have made it to this day, because I thought it was still far off. I thought I would not make it, and I'm very happy and this is going to get better.
Those who receive their first vaccine dose feel more confident about being able to carry out their daily activities, especially those who at some point experience first-hand the effects of COVID-19.
Unfortunately, I experienced it. I got infected. Thanks God I'm still here and I'm telling you about it. And now with this vaccine I feel safer, calmer. People should not hesitate to come and get vaccinated. They should do it for everyone's sake.
Health authorities report that despite an increase of up to 11% in the number of confirmed cases, hospitalization and death remain on a downward trend. According to the latest report, the occupancy rate of general care beds is 17%. According to data from the National Institute of Genomic Medicine, as of June 18th, there were 223 cases of the coronavirus strain known as Delta. The Undersecretary of Health made a statement on the issue, which is sparking concern among citizens. So far, the scientific evidence on whether they are more aggressive is not conclusive. What does more aggressive mean? That they are more likely to cause patients to develop a severe or even lethal disease. None of the strain known as variants of concern B or C, according to the English abbreviations, are clearly considered more aggressive. So far, the country has received 52.7 million doses of COVID-19 vaccine and 30.3 million people have been vaccinated. The number of COVID-19 cases accumulated since the beginning of the health emergency total 26 million, and the death associated with the disease total 232,000.
Eduardo Martinez, teleSUR, Ciudad de México.
As Cuba sees a surge in COVID-19 cases in several provinces as new and highly contagious strains spread, the government approved a new plan of measures. While cases have been falling in Havana as vaccination advances, other parts of the island are reporting record figures. The updated plan includes reinforcement of the current measures, including in terms of those entering the country from abroad, epidemiological surveillance and the guarantee of necessary medical supplies. Essential services will be maintained but under strict prevention measures, while mobility will be reduced as much as possible. This Tuesday saw an all-time record of over 3,000 new cases confirmed in 24 hours.
Las provincias de La Habana, Matanzas y Mayabeque fueron las que reportaron la mayor cantidad.
Antigua and Barbuda received on Tuesday a batch of 20,000 doses of the Sinopharm vaccine donated by China as part of an initiative by the ALBA trade bloc to ensure fair distribution of shots across Latin America and the Caribbean. Through the ALBA Bank, the Bolivarian Alliance for the Peoples of Our America People's Trade Treaty established an air bridge working with Venezuela's flagship airline COLOMBIA to deliver the vaccine to the Caribbean nation, where Prime Minister Gaston Brown received the shipment from Raul Calci, president of the ALBA Bank. With these doses, Antigua and Barbuda will be able to vaccinate almost 40% of its population. Russia's Sputnik V vaccine against COVID-19 is around 90% effective against the highly contagious Delta variant of the novel coronavirus, according to its developers. The creators of Sputnik V on Tuesday refuted unfounded media reports of a sharp decline in the effectiveness of the Russian vaccine against the highly contagious variant. Galileo Institute researchers confirmed that the reduction of the effectiveness of the vaccine was 2.6 times lower against the variant first discovered in India, meaning it still provides a high level of protection. In comparison, experts pointed out that studies carried out with the Pfizer and Moderna shots under the same conditions showed that effectiveness against the Delta variant was much lower. And we have more stories coming up after this final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. Canadian Indigenous groups have called for the July 1st Canada Day celebration to be cancelled. The general outcry over genocidal practices in boarding schools for Indigenous children makes festivities and fireworks celebrations inappropriate, First Nations leaders have said. Even though up to this day Canada is formally ruled by the Queen of England, it declared itself a nation in 1867. The recently revealed history is that such a new nation did not include Indigenous people. Some 150,000 children were forcibly taken away from their parents and enrolled in church-run schools aimed at assimilating them into the European culture. It turned out that scores of children were murdered in the so-called boarding schools, which were finally shut down only in the 1990s. Some 1,000 unmarked graves of Indigenous children have recently been found in schoolyards. An Indigenous representative and Ontario Parliament member, Sol Mamakwa, took to Twitter to make the pledge for the cancellation of the festivities. Let's hear his words.
I want to be able to wish everyone a happy Canada Day, but I cannot. Many Canadians are now finally waking up to the horrific price that was paid to establish this country we call Canada. Some people are asking, how do we celebrate? As we continue to see our stolen children's remains uncovered across the country, there is no hiding that the church and state committed genocide.
At least 7 asylum seekers died and 9 others are still missing in the Mediterranean Sea after a shipwreck, Italian authorities reported. So far, 46 passengers have been rescued alive and transferred to the island of Lampedusa by the Coast Guard, authorities reported. The search for the missing continues. On Tuesday, 4 vessels arrived in Lampedusa with a total of 136 refugees. In the first semester of this year, more than 19,000 people have reached Italian coasts fleeing conflict and poverty, while at least 700 have died in a dangerous journey. Russian President Vladimir Putin addressed the Ukraine crisis, talks of his successor, tensions with the United States and the Sputnik V vaccination campaign, among several other issues, on the television event Direct Line with Russian citizens this Wednesday. Yearly, on June 30th and over several hours, Putin answers questions put to him by the public over social media, text messages and direct calls. This time Putin confirmed he had received the Sputnik V vaccination and insisted it was not mandatory. He also said that a meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky would be useful only if free of external commands from the United States. He also spoke of the new US administration and his recent meeting with President Joe Biden.
You should proceed from the understanding that the world changes quickly. Whatever actions imposed on Russia, whatever the threats are, Russia develops. Its economic sovereignty increases. Its defense capability reaches a very high level, beyond many countries of the world, including the United States. The world fundamentally changes. On the one hand, our partners in the United States understand this. Therefore, the meeting in Geneva. On the other hand, they try to keep their monopoly position, whatever it takes. There are threats, destructive behavior, including these drills in the Black Sea, provocations and sanctions.
Biafra separatist leader Nnamdi Kanu has been extradited to Nigeria to stand trial. Kanu is a leader of the Igbo people in the federal state of Biafra, southeast Nigeria. A British national, he was arrested and extradited from an undisclosed location through Interpol, Nigerian authorities say. He'll be tried for subversion, and it's likely that unrest will erupt in his homeland. The Igbo are Nigeria's third largest ethnic group. The conflict between the Igbo people and the Nigerian federal government dates to the 1960s, when a breakaway Republic of Biafra was proclaimed, sparking a 3-year civil war. An estimated 1 million ethnic Igbo died in the conflict, mostly from starvation. And we've come to the end of this news brief, but remember you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also follow us on social media for all the latest news. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and Telegram. Plus you can catch up on our shows on our YouTube channel. For teleSUR English, I'm Katrina Goss. Thank you for watching.